unusual because if you rescue the man, you make him into a national TV star, right? So there are a lot of issues with this story, all right? So Emma, could you do me a favor and just read the summary?
Okay. So to sum up, anti-aircraft equipment that supposedly didn't exist shot down an F-15 and apparently an A-10 Warthog the same day. A seriously wounded man climbed a 2.1 kilometers mountain. The U.S. seized an airfield 200 miles inside a country it's at war with, next to one of its most strategic nuclear sites, and deployed hundreds of troops, all apparently unimpeded. Lost 2 planes to sand and destroyed their own helicopters. Videos show heavy clashes, missiles raining down, but not a single person got even wounded. And the man at the center of it all, nobody knows who he is, completely anonymous, 0 pictures, but Trump says he is safe and sound. And so is the rescued A-10 Warthog pilot, who also remains anonymous.
Okay, so again, this story makes absolutely no sense. We don't understand why they had to build an airport. We don't understand how these planes got destroyed. And the fact that there are no casualties absolutely makes no sense whatsoever, okay? So maybe something else is going on. And people online are speculating that this was actually a failed ground invasion. And the mission was to sneak into Iran's nuclear power plant located in the area and steal Iran's enriched uranium, which it would need to build a nuclear weapon, okay? And by doing that, you deny the Iranians' capacity to build a nuclear weapon, and you can declare a victory, okay? All right, so what's the evidence for this? Well, on March 7th, 2026, so at the beginning of this war, a journalist named Barak Ravid wrote an article in Axios, which is a Washington-based media outlet, saying that the U.S. is considering sending special forces to seize Iran's nuclear stockpile, okay? Now, Barak Ravid is famous in Washington, D.C. because he's very close with the Israelis. He himself is Israeli. So he's able to get a lot of information from the government, okay? So from March 7th onward, there was news reporting that the Americans would insert special forces to steal the uranium. No one took this seriously because it's so stupid. Are you seriously gonna send in like 100 guys into the middle of Iran and like hope they can sneak into a military base and steal that uranium and then run away? That's just retarded. No one would do that, okay? So everyone's like, this is just a psyop. This is just disinformation, okay? No one took this seriously. I didn't take this seriously at all. But then, 4 days ago, a week ago, the Washington Post leaks a Pentagon plan to do exactly that. And it's a very detailed plan that involves hundreds or thousands of troops, okay? And the idea is to build a landing strip near the power plant in order to land forces, in order to land equipment. So this is a very detailed plan. The problem, so when this first came out, again, I didn't take it seriously because this is so retarded. Are you seriously gonna build an airport by yourself in the middle of Iran and hope the Iranians don't notice? And you're gonna land 1,000 troops in the middle of mountains where they're gonna rain missiles on you? It makes no sense whatsoever, okay? But unfortunately, if you just look at what happened this weekend, this is the plan they used. Where they sent 155 aircraft to try to create a landing strip. They sent in special forces. It was exactly the plan that Washington Post reported on. Okay? But then the question is, wait a minute here. This is a top secret military plan. How did the Washington Post get this? Well, the answer is because we assume that some generals gave it to them. All right? Peter Hegseth, the Secretary of War for Donald Trump, fired the top generals for the military. And we don't know why. There was never a reason given. We can suspect what happened was this. Donald Trump asked the generals to come up with a plan to steal the uranium, and the generals are like, let's just humor him, okay? Let's come up with this stupid, insane plan that there's no way this guy would agree to, and then we'll forget about it. They presented Donald Trump, and Donald Trump's like, this is a brilliant plan, this is a great movie, let's do this, guys! The generals are like, oh my God, he is insane. Oh my God, we are so screwed, man. And they refuse to carry it out. So Peter Hegseth is like, well, then you're fired, okay? And then Peter Hegseth orders the new generals to execute this plan. So again, we don't know what happened. We'll never know what happened, but the evidence suggests that this might have been a failed ground invasion. Another piece of evidence to suggest that this was a failed ground invasion with the intention of stealing the uranium is that the Iranians were able to recover ID in the crash site, okay? And it turns out that this woman happens to specialize in nuclear technology, an engineer. Why would you need an engineer who specializes in nuclear technology to rescue a pilot? Right? That's kind of strange. And the Americans have done stupid things like this before, okay? So in 1980, the Americans implemented something called Operation Eagle Claw. And the idea was that at this time, the Iranians had taken hostages, American hostages in Tehran, the American embassy, okay? So Jimmy Carter, the president, authorized a rescue operation. So, but Iran was too big. So what they did was the American military set up a forward operating base in the desert, halfway between Persian Gulf and Tehran. When they landed in their base, there was a sandstorm, and a lot of their planes malfunctioned. And they recognized that, oh my God, it's really hard to go through such an operation in Iran, so we should just go home, okay? So that was 1980, when Americans were pretty sane. Unfortunately, Americans are no longer sane, okay? This is January 3rd, when the Americans swept into Venezuela and kidnapped their president Maduro, thus ending the conflict between Venezuela and America. This is great TV. The plan worked out perfectly. It showed that Delta Force was invincible. And unfortunately, Donald Trump believes this, okay? He believes that if we did this in Venezuela, we can do this in Iran. And this explains how and why Donald Trump would agree to such an insane plan as to try to build an American military base in the middle of your enemy, okay? So the main message here is that whoever is leading America, whether it's Donald Trump or other people, for whatever reason, they believe that optics is all that matters. Okay? They think that reality is a movie, a Hollywood movie. And if they can script it properly, then the movie will turn out to be a wonderful, wonderful thing. Okay? This is a war about optics rather than strategy. And unfortunately, this is just how America's going to fight the war from now on. Okay? So let's just discuss what you need to win a war. If you are fighting a war, what are 3 things you need to look at, okay? And there are 3 things, and that's it. First thing you want to look at is economics. Okay, economics. Second thing you want to look at is organization. The third thing you want to look at is logistics. All right? So, what do I mean by this? Well, the first thing is resource management. In other words, you're trying to win a war as cheaply and as quickly as possible. Okay? Unfortunately, right now, the Americans are not fighting a war of economics. If you're spending $300 million in military equipment in order to rescue a pilot, you're not going to win this war. Okay? So economics is really important. Secondly, is the idea of organization, which is the implementation of strategy. Right? So you have a strategy, and then you implement it. And here, what's really important is the simpler the strategy, the easier it is to implement, okay? You want the strategy to be very simple because you have to organize it, implement it. So if you are trying to build an air base in the middle of Iran so you can extract uranium from the Iranians, that's not a good organization, okay? This thing is gonna blow up in your face. The third issue is logistics, which is just supply, okay? Supply. Making sure that your forces have the necessary equipment, the resources in order to fight the war effectively. And right now, the Americans are not concerned with any of these issues, economics, organization, and logistics. But these are the three major issues that you will need to figure out if you want to win a war, okay? And unfortunately right now, the Americans are too much focused on optics and narrative. So that's why I think the Americans will ultimately lose this war, because the Iranians are actually fighting a real war where they're trying to win the war as cheaply as possible, where they're implementing a very simple strategy that allows for proper organization, and they are trying to maintain logistics.